Hello, and welcome to Affordable Training for Health Fields. I'm Alexander Kafka, a senior editor at the Chronicle of Higher Education, and we're glad to have you with us today. In a lackluster job market, the health sector, along with social assistance jobs, is a bright spot. In March, the U.S. economy added 76,000 jobs in healthcare, 43% of new jobs. In 2025, the sector added almost 700,000 jobs. The health arena should stay strong, with the Labor Department projecting health jobs will increase by 8% from 2024 to 2034, compared to 3% growth in overall employment. As the population ages, cardiac and radiation technicians, nurses and nurse practitioners, speech therapists, physical and occupational therapists, pharmacists, psychiatric nurses, and many other health professionals are in strong demand, with good long-term prospects and impressive average salaries. Medical assistants, phlebotomists, and home care aides are also in demand. In some specialties, high turnover rates, burnout, and aging cohorts are accelerating that demand. Colleges and universities are launching and expanding health training programs accordingly, but figuring out what programs to offer in what regions with which partners is complicated. And standing up these programs is expensive and a gamble, especially as AI continuously shifts and redefines roles, and demands and interests cycle up and down as well. We're going to hear today from four experts who will give us a sense of the planning and the calculations that go into these programs, the program's potential, and their limits. Today's panel is being recorded, and within a few business days, you'll receive an email with the link to that video recording, as well as to related resources. Your registration today was free, and that is thanks to our sponsor, Carolina Biological Supply Company. Thanks, Carolina. Midway through the session, my colleague Ian Wilhelm will speak for a few minutes with Carolina's Shannon McGurk, Vice President for Strategy and Project Management. Before I introduce our panelists, let's do a little anonymous flash survey of viewers to set the stage for our discussion. My institution is A, starting new health training programs or expanding existing ones, considering starting or expanding health training programs, probably not going to start new health training programs or expand existing ones, or I'm not in a position to know, which is also a perfectly fair answer. In the Q&A, feel free to expand on those answers. If you have other questions for panelists, ask those too in the Q&A box, and we'll weave those in as many as we can throughout the hour. Please welcome our panel. Michael Dreyer is Dean of the Jefferson College of Health Professions at Thomas Jefferson University. Bethany Friedlander is President and CEO of New Bridge Cleveland. Usha Menon is Dean of the College of Nursing and Senior Associate Vice President of USF Health at the University of South Florida. And Kevin Rivenburg is Executive Director of Enrollment Management at Maria College. Welcome, panelists, and thanks for participating today. So let me ask you first each to take a few minutes to describe the scale and scope of your programs in terms of number of students, number of faculty and staff, the range of health occupations in which you have degree and other programs, the hospital or other systems with which you partner, and if possible, a sense of your student demographics in terms of age and life circumstances. In other words, an overview. And if we could start with you, Michael, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. So Thomas Jefferson University is a large academic health science center. It's an old one. We are 201 years old, started out as a medical school. There are three divisions to the enterprise. There's the health system, which has 33 hospitals, Jefferson Health, with 700 locations of care. And then we have Jefferson Health Plans, which is a health insurance company. And then we have Thomas Jefferson University, all of that under one leadership. So it's a fully integrated academic healthcare delivery system. The university has 10 colleges. Six of them are focused around healthcare. The others are around design, architecture, and business. The healthcare colleges, we have our medical college, which is a 200-year-old. It was actually the fifth medical school in the country, and Sidney Kimmel Medical College. And then we have five other health-related colleges. We have a nursing college, a college of rehabilitation sciences, a college of life sciences, a college of population health, a college of pharmacy, and the College of Health Professions. And within the College of Health Professions, we have, the main body of the college, and then we have attached to that, we have something called the Institute for Emerging Health Professions, which is an incubator and accelerator for new and emerging programs in healthcare. Collectively, there are some 70 plus programs in healthcare, both pre-professional and professional programs in healthcare, including about 7,000 students in the healthcare side. And they are principally at the baccalaureate, master's, and doctoral level, but we do have a few associate degree programs. So that's a snapshot.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. And the fact that it's so huge and such an integrated program is going to, I think, play into our discussion later on. So appreciate that sketch. Bethany, how about you?
I knew you were going to ask me to go afterwards. So, Michael, the one thing we have in common is we own the oldest nursing school in the state of Ohio. So we have old programs. So thank you for having me today. I'm President and CEO of Newbridge Cleveland. Newbridge Cleveland is a nonprofit that runs two accredited schools. We opened in Cleveland 15 years ago to serve Cleveland Clinic, University Hospitals, and Metro Health, three very large health systems in Cleveland, and work exclusively in workforce development and healthcare training. So we currently teach phlebotomy, sterile processing, medical assistant, LPN, moving to RN diploma this year, as well as sterile surgical tech. We do majority of those programs at no cost to the student, by which I mean we cover tuition, books, certifications, uniforms, bus passes, and we do that through a braided funding that I think we'll probably end up talking about later. Our average student is a 33-year-old African-American woman who's also a mom of at least two kids. About 30% of them have had a post-secondary experience before they come to us that has not been successful, either because life circumstances had changed or the academics or oftentimes financial reasons. So many of them are in default, which is part of the reason why the programming is done at no cost.
Thanks, Bethany. That's great. Usha, how about you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm Usha Menon. I am Dean of the College of Nursing at the University of South Florida and Senior Associate Vice President at USF Health. The four health colleges at USF are embedded within USF Health Sciences Center, and we are the Morsani College of Medicine, the College of Public Health, the Taneja College of Pharmacy, and the College of Nursing. In the College of Nursing, we offer both undergraduate and graduate programs, full degrees, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, a Master of Science in Nursing, a Doctor of Nursing Practice, and then a PhD in Nursing Science. We have two pathways in the undergraduate program. One is the freshman entry pathway, which is your sort of, if you think about it, your traditional student comes in as a freshman. They do their first 2 years doing their prerequisites, the general studies, and then they have to apply to nursing and to the College of Nursing for the last 2 years. And the second pathway is the accelerated second degree pathway, where you have a degree in another health sciences field, you've done your prerequisites, and it's 4 semesters for you to get the bachelor's in nursing. On the graduate side, we offer the master's and the Doctor of Nursing Practice and the PhD. Our PhD program tends to stay fairly small at the moment, as we have a nursing faculty shortage, and we don't want to bring students in when they don't have enough researchers to be mentored, so we keep very close eye on aligning that. But in terms of the master's specialties, the nurse practitioner specialties, we offer the pediatric NP, family NP, adult gerontology acute care, adult gerontology primary care, a psychiatric mental health certificate, And then we have, I believe, the third largest certified registered nurse anesthesiology program in the country. In certificates, we offer further a RN First Assist, which is a self-paced online program that you then do experiential training with a surgeon mentor. We have a certificate in sustainability for nurses in acute care settings to learn how to sort of, work on their carbon footprint. And we are going to launch a new master's in transformational leadership that will have 3 tracks: nursing education, business management taught by the Muma College of Business, or AI nursing analytics that's taught by our very new Bellini College of AI, cyber security, and computing. So it's an exciting time for us. In terms of students, we have about 1,700 and counting. About, I would say, 900 plus are undergraduate. Roughly 800 plus are on the graduate side. Our average age in the undergraduate program tends to be about 22. The freshman entry typically sees students coming in about 18 to 19 years, and then the accelerated students might be a little bit older than that. And the graduate program really fluctuates wildly, but typically you're not going to find nurses coming into graduate programs in their late 20s or 30s. They wait a little bit to come in. And then the biggest challenge we're facing right now, in addition to clinical placements, is the nursing faculty shortage. One challenge is also that across the country, you're seeing decreased enrollment in graduate programs in nursing, and that's the pipeline for faculty. So it's sort of, one is feeding into the other.
That's great, Usha. Thanks. And we'll talk more about some of those faculty and other supervisory limits to growth in your programs. Kevin, tell us about Maria College, please.
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Rivenburg with Maria College. We were founded in 1958 as a Sisters of Mercy institution. We are on the very small scale. We serve about 850 students at our campus in New York's Capital District. About 600 of those students are in nursing-focused career clusters, about 100 in arts and sciences that are often pre-professional study, about 100 in occupational therapy areas, and then about 50 in emerging areas that we are doing in allied health, many of which with our neighboring partners, so including Albany Medical Health Partners and St. Peter's Health Partners and systems, adjacent to which we are their flagship hospitals. Much like Newbridge, Cleveland, our mode median student is a 31-year-old woman of color that's attended 2 colleges previously, trying to complete prerequisites or other clinical health programs. And we really specialize in having kind of scaffolded programs where you can start with us in a certificate as an LPN, bridge into an advanced standing RN, complete an online bachelor's degree in nursing, and we offer those certificates, associates, bachelor's, and master's, but only in healthcare and human service areas.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. And sorry, I turned Rivenburg into Rivenburg. This is why I went into print journalism and not broadcast. So let's pull up those poll results and get a better feel for how our viewers are sort of thinking about these things and where you're at in your own journeys. So 44% starting new health training programs or expanding, 33% considering doing so, 5% only 5% probably not going to, 18% not in a position to know. So it sounds and it makes sense for a program like today's. Like a lot of you are looking into this or maybe even taking steps beyond those first exploratory ones. So hopefully today's session will be helpful to you. So the word affordable is in the very title of this panel. So you know that I'm going to ask each of you to talk about the ways that you try to keep tuition and other costs down for the students you serve. That could mean available scholarships, use of Pell or other sorts of philanthropy, earn to learn arrangements. Bethany, I think you'll talk more about that with hospitals or clinics, etc. And we'll go in the opposite order this time and start with you, Kevin.
Sure. So we have many signed MOUs or partnerships with those local health systems and individual long-term care facilities, human service organizations, that many of which offer discounted tuition for tuition reimbursement and often come with an agreement for clinical sites for our students. So in many ways, it's a win-win-win with these partnerships in that it's more affordable for either the employer. We get privileged recruitment space at many of these locations to work with their students, and our students, regardless of their employer, are able to take advantage of expanded clinical sites at many of these places. With our location being adjacent to those two flagship hospitals of our two largest healthcare systems, many of our recent programs have been built at the behest of or in conjunction with those local healthcare systems and have included having dedicated clinical space or using equipment at their site, reducing our initial costs to build new programs, particularly ones that have very expensive equipment or startup costs.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Just a reminder to viewers, if you have questions for the panelists, go ahead and plunk those into the Q&A box. Usha, can you talk about that affordability factor with your students?
Yes, our tuition is pretty low at the University of South Florida. I think it's second or third lowest in the country for the undergraduates, and we have not raised tuition in many, many years. And so I think that is one point of affordability for the students. They apply for their traditional Pell Grants and others, but that's only the freshman nursing pathway. The accelerated students are considered second time in college, so they are not available for the majority of first time in college resources that are offered. And so we rely a lot on philanthropy in order to give those scholarships. Like you just said, we do have those partnerships with area hospitals, and they do fund people for a return to work contract. And so, it might be 2 years and they fund the education, which they have to administer themselves. We don't administer that at the university, and others will fund them as scholars, that belong to that particular hospital or acute care setting. The state of Florida has an interesting program called LINE, Linking Industry to Nursing Education. And for the state university school system, there's a $6 million that they will use to match anything that you get from industry to support your students for scholarship. And you can do a lot of things with it except new building. You can renovate your simulation center, you can do faculty retention, faculty hiring. And so we traditionally get about 1.5 million that's then matched by the state. That has been enormously helpful. So a couple of things that we do with that is, in the undergraduate program, we ask them to take ATI assessments. These are the assessments before they sit for the NCLEX exam. And students typically have to pay for that themselves. There's also the fee to take the NCLEX exam. There's the fee for the background check. And what we found is students were taking longer and longer to do the exam as these things became less affordable for them. So some of the line money is being used to give them vouchers so that they can sit for their exams earlier. Research shows the sooner you take the exam after graduating, the better the more likely you are to pass the exam. But we have about 60 named scholarships and gave out about 220 scholarship awards, roughly about 886,000 in scholarships. And very interestingly, one of the things that we are continuing to see grow is the need for emergency scholarships. And this could be just about anything. My car broke down to my credit card was hacked to it's all these situations that students run into. And I think last year we did about 184,000, and these come from unrestricted gifts that are alumni. We have about 15,000 alumni, and many of them will contribute to the emergency scholarship that is at the dean's discretion to hand out.
Thank you, Usha. That's a great overview on that. Bethany, can you talk about Newbridge in terms of the affordability? You've already said that it's essentially a, no-cost program for students, but can you talk a little more about the business model and how that actually works?
Sure. So when we opened, we offered all of our programs at no cost. We braided together philanthropy, corporate support, state of Ohio operating support. And as programs got lengthier and in order to drive wages up and to move towards family sustaining wages, we then braided in tuition reimbursement from our hospital partners. In the last 3 years, the hospitals have come to the table to co-design earn-to-learn models. So these are models where students are going to school 3 days a week. They're working 2 days a week, but they're paid full-time with benefits. So the benefit to us is that the completion rates are incredibly high. The passage rates are incredibly high, which are great for us to use to tell our stories with other funders. So there's a real benefit to us. And it also eliminates the need we were just talking about, but emergency scholarships or barrier removals, because people are sustained during training. And so I would say now about a third of our students are in an earn to learn model. Those are traditionally students, employees who have been working for at least a year. They're eligible for the tuition reimbursement by the hospitals, but they've also been identified as being students that they want to invest in and that they see promise in. They do not sign employment contracts, so they're not obligated to work at the hospitals afterwards, although generally the retention is significantly higher for the employer as well.
Thanks. And let me ask you, Bethany, Alicia Conley in the Q&A asked what impact workforce Pell rules will have on your programs. And you and I have talked a little bit about that last week. I guess there's some restrictions on how those work and how long programs have to be around for those to kick in and things like that. So is Pell and our workforce Pell changes factors in what you're doing there?
It's a great question. So our community colleges have traditionally offered some of the same allied health training. Those trainings have been longer than our training because they included general studies in order to increase the hours up to Pell eligibility. They are in the process of shortening those programs so that they, I believe, will subsidize them through workforce Pell as opposed to traditional Pell. I think that for us, that has never really been our secret sauce. I know it sounds like it would be, but actually, our secret sauce is the fact that because we work with 3 hospital systems and have placed over 1,000 individuals there, we are, one, very good at predicting what hospital system students should go to, and two, we are very good at predicting their long-term retention. The student likes the fact that the externship, in essence, is a trial run, and they know that if that goes well, then they're never coming back to us for job search. And frankly, most of my students don't want to learn job search after they've just learned, medical assisting. So I think it will make the community colleges more competitive. Now, I say competitive with a bit of tongue in cheek because they are 20 times my size. And so I never really consider them competition. But I think that what we will stand on is an 83% completion rate and a 98% placement rate, which I think is difficult for the community colleges to compete with.
Sure. So you have a sort of specialized niche in that environment there. And Michael, can you talk about the economics from the student standpoint of your programs?
Sure. So we've looked at how we increase affordability across like a number of different domains. So from the pre-professional student, the traditional undergrad, we do a lot of scholarshiping, very significant scholarshiping at that level, as I think many institutions do. But we move from there for other students into those that are employed through complementing not just tuition reimbursement, but an assisted tuition model. So it's different than I have a benefit at work, but this is a structured benefit around workforce needs. So where employers are willing to go beyond tuition reimbursement to actually an assisted tuition model where they have established a workforce need, where they begin to look at education not just as an employee benefit, but an employer benefit. And that begins to justify, digging into their budgets to support education as an employer need, not an employee need. And we've been doing a lot of work both locally and nationally. We have 65,000 healthcare workers within our own system. And so we spend a lot of time, trying to meet the needs within our system, in addition to the regional and national need. We also have worked a lot around the earn while you learn model, but in a little different way. So we work with a number of large corporate groups and large health systems. We have number of the national labs who we do educational programming, full credentialing programming, where the students do all of their clinical and lab work with their employer all over the country. And we just validate that education. And so we do the didactic education online. They do their clinical and lab work at their job as part of their job. And it's been very, very effective for us. And when you look at clinical education, they generally fall into three buckets, right? You have your didactic education, which it can be fairly easily done online. You have your clinical education, which is, with some type of mentorship, which is generally available for most disciplines. But then you have the labs, where it gets tricky. And how do you accommodate labs, skill labs? And but we've been able to get that at the employer setting. So it allowed us to use a more distributed model, even for those high tech, high touch disciplines that are challenging to have labs that are further out. And finally is, we had traditionally run most of our educational programs at the baccalaureate level or above. So we only had one or two associate degree programs until very recently. And what we've begun to do is what we define as a flipped curriculum. So traditionally, students would come in and do 2 years of their prerequisites, their arts and sciences, and all their prerequisite courses, and then do their professional work. So we've begun to flip that around and get that in the front. So students are work ready sooner and begin to build educational products, understanding that there really are two different markets and two different problems we're trying to solve around affordability and around what we offer in terms of value. One is the traditional student who's coming looking for a job for life or a career for life. And we have programming around that and pathways around that. And we've done that for a long time. But we're really beginning to appreciate what the employer is looking for is a worker today, which is very different than a career for life. That's different in terms of their educational requirements, what they're willing to spend, how they want to invest, time to completion. And we've begun to understand and build programming that bifurcates that, understanding there are two separate problems that need to be solved around this and around affordability. And we're trying to tackle each with a unique set of solutions.
I really like that phrase, a flipped curriculum. And yeah, that's such an interesting idea, flipping that notion that, oh, of course you want your liberal arts, general core curriculum, and then you want your job skills on top of it. And yeah, in this day and age, there's a good argument in a lot of cases to get those job skills up first and make that sort of the foundation. So yeah, thanks for explaining that. So Salvador in the Q&A box is asking, it's a longer question you should look at, but I think it sort of boils down to how do you stand up your programs in an affordable way and in a timely way? And so I guess I'd ask any panelist who wants to chime in if you can take an example of either a newish program or one that you're about to start, or an existing program that maybe you're trying to spread into a new region. For instance, I know at Jefferson, you're pushing into the Lehigh Valley a little bit. I'm just wondering if you can give a little bit of a behind the curtain feel for the data and the planning and the conversations that went into that decision. Whoever wants to jump in with an example like that.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about how we started off with the psych mental health certificate. This was a master's program, nurse practitioner program that we had many years ago, and we sunset the program because we just didn't have enough faculty, not enough students, but not enough faculty. And this is my song, my drum beat, my soapbox for the day. But the need in the community was so high that I actually had a senior VP of behavioral health at one of our larger hospital systems come to me and say, why do you not have this program? We so desperately need nurse practitioners. So in this case, we didn't really even have to do a large market analysis because the community was coming to us saying, we can do this. And while many of them were not able to give us funds per se to support tuition, they did commit to clinical placements, which is another challenging aspect for us because we place all of our students in the Tampa Bay area. And so we did some of a market analysis. We sent surveys out, to the employers, got a rough idea of what, their salaries might be starting out. And then we also had to really pay attention to the scope of practice because in Florida, family nurse practitioners can be autonomous once they go through the requisite training hours. Psych mental health NPs are not autonomous. And so, sifting through all of that so we could give the potential student coming in a really good picture of what's going to happen. Just like I think Michael was talking about in terms of the earning, we have something called preceptorship to hire on the undergraduate side. And we place the student at an area hospital that they've said they would like to work in, or, a pediatric unit. And the hospital then has the option to onboard them a little differently. It saves them quite a bit of money because they're onboarding that student, when they're our student, not their employee. And then they can offer them a job even, contingent upon them passing the RN licensure exam.
Thanks for that, Usha. And I'm trying to remember, Kevin, was it you who, when we spoke before, was talking about how you were able to use some existing lab or simulation space for a new program? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, many of our new programs have been initiated by the local employers that have a desperate employee need. And so with that, they often offer us maybe their second to last set of equipment or a new space that is being remodeled as a teaching space. So particularly for what would normally be quite expensive program onboarding, such as for radiologic technology, where you need all of that imaging equipment, or for surgical technology where you might need a surgical suite, our local healthcare partners have provided that space where we do both our laboratory work with students, but also the clinical assignments are part of the job descriptions of their existing staff. So their staff that have a preceptor role in their job descriptions, offsetting some of that salary, demands from us offering these new programs as an institution.
Yeah, so it's really not no cost standing it up, but at least lower costs having some of those resources available. Um, do either of the other panelists want to chime in on that before we go to our sponsor interview?
Sure. I just to add a little bit about the point that I think you were heading towards around what kind of data you use, right, in making these decisions. And I think one of the things we've learned is that workforce data is almost by its nature historic data, and we need forecasting data. So when you go back and you say, we are short X number of employees, so can you get us help? I'm sure many of us have heard that. We are short nurses, we're short. Well, that's what you have now. For us to solve that problem and build a program, you're not going to see the results for 3 or 4 years, right? So you're going to start seeing students. So you're constantly chasing the past instead of working towards what the future is going to be. And I think that's one of the challenges when you think about health workforce, education. How will you begin to predict, not based upon just what's happened or recently or what's even happening today? How are you predicting what's happening in the future? And I think that's one of our great challenges, that those data aren't readily available to make those predictions, and we're often just chasing the past.
Yeah, analytics is one thing and fortune telling is another. And AI just complicates all of that. So panelists, let's you and I take a breather while my colleague Ian Wilhelm speaks with Carolina's Shannon McGurk, and then we'll pick this all up in a few minutes. Ian, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Alex, and thanks to the panelists so far. We've enjoyed the conversation. And folks who are putting questions into the Q&A, let us know if you have questions, and Alex will pick those up in the second half of this conversation. But as he mentioned, I'll be talking now with Shannon McGurk, who's the Vice President with Carolina Biological Supply, which is the sponsor for today. Shannon, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate the conversation so far about this idea of how do we lower the costs around some of these programs. And we had mentioned some of the folks talking about their online work in this area, and that's something that you all certainly focus on. Could you let us know, or let the audience know who may not be familiar with your work at Carolina, about what you all do and how you all work with colleges, and to help sort of provide some context for your remarks?
Absolutely. So Carolina Biological has been supporting science education for over 95 years, and that long history really matters in this space. We are best known for providing high quality science materials and lab solutions for educators, and through Carolina Distance Learning, we help colleges and universities deliver rigorous hands-on lab experiences to students wherever they are. So this includes customizable at-home lab kits across multiple scientific disciplines, along with course design support and flexible implementation. So what really sets Carolina apart is the combination of deep scientific expertise, operational experience, and a strong focus on learning outcomes. Our role is not just supplying materials, it's partnering with institutions to make high quality science learning more accessible, practical, and effective.
Let's talk a little bit about that and how you partner with some of those institutions that you work with. I'm curious, sort of in general, like what are the first steps when you come to a college? What are some of the questions you have that are frequently asked of all of you as you start to kind of get a partnership potentially going?
Yeah, that's great. So we begin working with new campuses, and the first questions are usually really practical. How do we make sure the labs align with our learning outcomes? Can the kits be customized? How does shipping and timing and student support work? And especially in science, people also ask about safety, accreditation, and whether students will really get a hands-on experience that matches the rigor of an in-person lab. Those are exactly the right questions. We found that institutions want a partner who can help them think through implementation from both the faculty and student perspective. So it's not just about what goes into the kit, but how the student experience is going to go.
Can we talk a little bit more about that student experience? Maybe perhaps pick up on what you said about how you are thinking about your work as designed for the learner, right? Designed for the students and how they may help with their student outcomes. Could you talk about like sort of practically what that may look like? And kind of what factors you may consider. You mentioned safety, certainly. You mentioned sort of the rigor, lots of things to consider with some of these opportunities. I'm just kind of curious when you say we're working for the students, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, so designing the course for the learner means being very intentional about the experience from the student's point of view. We start with learning outcomes and ask, what does the student need to know? What do they need to do? What do they need to demonstrate by the end of the course? And then we build backwards. So the instructional activities, the assessments, the technology, the hands-on pieces are all aligned to that goal. So in practice, that means making sure the course is clear, easy to navigate, because as we've heard, students are often balancing work, family, other responsibilities, and they should be spending their energy on learning, not figuring out where to click next. So it also means that the course has to be really active and not passive, especially in science and health sciences. Students need opportunities to practice. They need to apply concepts, solve problems, build confidence through hands-on experiences, through case-based work, and also they need meaningful feedback from their instructors. So we also consider accessibility, flexibility, cost, safety, shipping logistics, all of those really important things, and the level of faculty and institutional support needed to make the experience successful. So when we say we design for the learner, we mean we are creating a course experience that's rigorous and outcomes driven, but it's also practical, it's supportive, and it's built for how students actually learn and succeed.
Gotcha. Talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of when you work with campus, what results you've had, and you can probably draw on a variety of things for this. But I'm curious about what you think, look to, and point to, and say, okay, here, this is where we've been successful when we work with this institution. Here's what we look at. Here's where I'm kind of measuring that success, given the focus on the student.
Yeah, so one of the things that comes up often is transferability of credit. And so when a student takes an online course, science course, is it going to be transferable? So what campuses are telling us is that the real issue is usually not whether students can learn effectively in an online environment, it's whether policies caught up to practice. So We've done some research with the Online Learning Consortium, and faculty repeatedly said students were meeting the same core learning outcomes with at-home lab kits. And they felt that the rigor and quality of the traditional lab experience was being kind of mirrored. But where friction shows up is around institutional rules and accreditation frameworks that are built on an older model. So
Sure.
the takeaway is pretty powerful when campuses design intentionally, they document equivalency and keep learning outcomes at the center. They put themselves in a much stronger position to support transferability and credit recognition. So in many cases, the capability is already there. The opportunity is for policy to better align with what faculty and students are demonstrating in practice.
I appreciate that point. Well, Shannon, thanks very much for your time today and contributing to the conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I've been talking with Shannon McGurk, who's again a vice president with Carolina. We appreciate their support for this session as well. Alex, back to you in the panel.
Thank you, Shannon and Ian. So let's do another flash survey to get this second segment kicked off here. The greatest challenge or obstacle to growing my institution's health training program is A, insufficient funds to invest in starting or growing those programs. B, lack of or insufficient interest from hospital systems or other partner institutions. C, tuition would be too expensive for our prospective student pool, or there are other problems with our proposed business models. Or D, again, I don't have enough information to know. So we'll go back and get a read on those in a second. And Linda and Magali, I'm going to try to get to your questions as well. But let me pick up here with the panelists asking about upskilling, which is a key component of many of your programs. At least some of these courses are designed to be flexible for students who are already working, as you mentioned, in health facilities, sometimes with demanding shifts or family responsibilities. So I'm going to ask each of you, what are some of the ways that you found to keep these programs flexible for working students? And Usha, if we could start with you on that one.
Sorry, I lost the cursor.
No, that's all right. I'm glad we didn't just like lose you from Zoom.
One of the ways that we are doing this is to introduce the micro-credentialing or certificate programs that, allow our busy nurses to quickly take programs. They still get that university experience. We offer them online. We also make them self-paced. So that again, students can take this as they want. Now, there's some limits around that. You can't really do this over the wander the desert for 40 years to do it, but we give them about 6 months and then kind of follow up with them. The new programs that we're starting are another way that we're responding to the community's needs for this quote unquote upskilling. But introducing programs that are non-clinical in nursing, I think, is important because we do have people that don't necessarily want to be nurse practitioners, but would like administrative positions or leadership positions, and not necessarily always an executive position, C-suite, but the middle level, where they can really make a contribution to the profession, etc.
Got it. Thank you. Michael, how about you on that question of flexibility of your programs?
Yeah, so I think the area that we really try to break some new ground on is creating real pathways into better paying work, right? And one of the challenges around upskilling is having, a pathway that justifies the effort that someone needs to take to do the additional education. So I'll just share an example of something that we've recently built, and I think gives a sense of how we're trying to approach this. So we have, across our system, we have 2 paramedic programs that give grant a certificate with no credit. And they've been around for many, many years, 50 years for both of them. And we've now built a program where they get 30 credits for that experience, and that leads them to an associate degree in paramedicine, which guarantees them a seat into our respiratory bachelor's program, which is an online program, which if they complete that program and hit a minimum threshold, guarantees them a seat either into our PA program or a perfusion program. So the idea there is to continually to provide opportunity an incentive for people to move through the system. So we start with somebody who's in a program that doesn't even offer any credit, and they can move into a very high paying job if they just follow the path within the same system. And I think that that's been our approach, and we've been replicating that in a variety of different ways of creating incentives, real genuine incentives for people not just to get on that path, but to stay on that path for an extended period of time and stay with the employer and stay with us as their educator.
Nice. And I imagine that example speaks to you too. If I remember right, early in your career, you were involved in paramedicine yourself, right? Did I
A
make
long,
that
long
up?
time ago.
Long time ago? Bethany, how about you? You've already discussed how much your students are juggling. And can you tell us a little bit more about how you keep your programs flexible for those students?
Yeah, so in one sense, my mind's been racing thinking about answering this question. So I'm just going to say, I don't actually think we are very flexible because I think what we are trying to do is something different than that. We are taking students who've often been exposed to tremendous amounts of individual-based, community-based, and educational-based trauma, who have not been successful in traditional educational spaces. And we are wrapping a trauma-informed educational approach around them. That includes one room, one cohort, one instructor, one start time, one stop time. And that model is not flexible. But what it does allow us to do is A, ensure a high degree of success, and B, keep the programs as short as possible. So again, some of our shorter programs are 5 days a week. They're 8 to 2. So not a lot of flexibility, but a tremendous amount of success. And then those individuals can always come back to us through our longer programs. Now we're moving to a 3-day model where they are able to work 2 days a week. We really work with our employer partners to make sure that even if they're not in an earn and learn, so they're not getting paid full time, even a part-time person, we want to make sure that they're still getting benefits. But I would say our model really isn't all that flexible because we have found that a lot of those flexibilities have also been some of the things that have been challenges for our students.
Because maybe they haven't offered enough structure or other
Exactly.
factors. Yeah.
Exactly. I think there's just so much power in a cohort. And, I will say that every Newbridgian, which is a technical term, a Newbridgian graduates in that says that they graduated from Newbridge and they find each other at the hospitals because there's hundreds of them and they continue to support each other because they did learn in that cohort model. They're incredibly close. And I think what I tell our community college all the time is that our transfer students are the very best students you'll ever have because they've had some of that time to heal some of those deep fears and anxieties they've had about being in traditional educational settings, and they're ready and they're also super focused. And so in that arena, I think that's a really specific role that we play.
Yeah, so it's a flexibility of resources and opportunity more than of time and scheduling. Um,
Exactly.
Kevin, what about you? You mentioned to me once that you have students actually commuting up there from New York City and juggling that commute on top of all kinds of other job or school or whatever family demands. So talk to me about how you try to structure your programs.
Yeah, so peculiar probably to our geography and our local, kind of demographics, being the capital of New York, that's a B or C list metropolitan area. We are within 3 or 4 hours for some of the largest like metropolitan areas, including Greater Boston, New York City, Philadelphia. And so many of actually the entirety of our master's degree programs and our certificate programs are offered on an alternating weekend basis, allowing workers that have a traditional Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday job, particularly if they have some flexibility over the summer, which many of our state and government employees would have. They're able to come to campus, have a cohort experience on Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday night. You will see the Amtrak group come in with their wheelie suitcases running down the hallway. We're taking the Chinatown bus from New York City and coming in and being part of a cohort that eats together, studies together, goes home and does asynchronous courses and the 2 weeks in between, and then comes back for our campus experience again 2 weeks later. We also we have a Center for Academic Innovation, which includes VR, XR, AR, so virtual reality, extended reality, augmented reality, that allows us to extend our clinical reach as well, and reduce some of those costs. For many of us, probably our clinical faculty might be 2 or 3 times that of traditional didactic or classroom faculty in size. And that's another way for us to extend our reach, into virtual space or, further than a 2 or 3 hour commute.
Got it. Thanks. Ian, are we able to bring up the poll results and take a look at some of the challenges folks are facing? Okay, so 47%, thanks, Ian, insufficient funds to invest in starting new programs, 16% lack of or insufficient interest from hospital systems or partners, 16% tuition would be too expensive, and 20% not in a position to know. So really a mix of obstacles along the lines of what our panelists have been talking about here. So let me get to Linda's question in the Q&A. Linda Kirsch asks, must you be an in-state student for some of these places? And if not, is the cost higher? And I would think Usha and Bethany, I don't know, that might be more applicable to your programs. I'm not sure.
Was the question the cost difference between in-state and out-state?
Between in-state and out-of-state, yeah.
So I actually just put that down here. The undergraduate cost for in-state students is $6,410, and for the out-of-state residents, it's $17,324. Now we also have a policy from the Board of Governors that they would like 95% of our students to be in-state in these programs. So it is much more expensive for the out-of-state students.
Yeah. And is that a factor for your program, Bethany?
So our mission is Northeast Ohio, so it's not city limited, it's not state limited. We've never had an out-of-state student apply. I'll
So
put it
as a
out there
practical
now.
matter,
As a practical
yeah.
matter, right. It would be an interesting challenge to take on.
Got it. Hopefully that answered your question, Linda. And Magali was asking what role local nonprofits working with youth and young professionals can play in helping students with these programs. So what barriers could those nonprofits address to support your programs if you had a wish list there?
So can I answer that actually?
Please.
So we are really interested in pipeline work, and we know that we need to start pipeline work as early as possible. So we will see about 900 6th, 7th, and 8th graders every year who come through for a really comprehensive field trip. We use transfer augmented reality goggles so that they can go into the operating room and they can work as a surge tech, they can work as a phlebotomist, see what that's like. And I think that early pipeline work is really important. Many of our hospitals have fantastic programming for high schoolers, including and up to pulling them into their pipeline of employees and tuition reimbursement. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, most hospitals do not want to work with. They're kind of bananas, so we don't really want them running around their hallways. And often in Cleveland, they are unvaccinated. Unfortunately, we have a pretty low vaccination rate. And so we thought it was a place we could lean in, and we're seeing outstanding results. Those students are coming back to us year over year, and then they take part in our high school summer program. And so I think I would encourage people who wanted to work with youth to start to think about those middle schoolers, because they have a unique set of challenges for the hospitals, but maybe not for nonprofits.
That's great. Thank you.
Alex, could I add to that, please?
Yeah, please jump in, Usha.
Pipeline, as Bethany said, is very critical. The programs at USF for nursing are very competitive, but we do want to see students from, all backgrounds coming. So we're in the high schools a lot, and even dropping into middle school to tell them, if you were thinking about nursing, you've got to get your grades up now. We run an amazing program, a 4-day kind of a boot camp that's funded by a local family foundation, and it brings students in. They get a little bit of a flavor. They do simulation. They learn how to, take blood pressure, heart rate. They get scrubs. And then they sort of have a little ceremony, and I cry through the whole thing every single time. But parents come, we give them lunch, they get a stethoscope and a white coat, and it's a lot about saying you can do this. And it doesn't matter if nobody in your family or no one on your street has ever done this before. This is you, and this could be you tomorrow. We bring in our current students to talk to them, so that's exciting as well. But one of the things I also wanted to mention very quickly is that, we've talked so much about cost. One of the things that I hear though from students, I kind of do these breakfasts with students or lunches with the students, is this feeling they have here with us that they're not quite a number. They feel valued and they feel listened to. We have varying levels of tours that they can come in and sign up for even before they come. And that I think is a little bit of the difference that, we're bringing to the table here, is that students are really feeling like they get individualized help. We have, in addition to our advisors, the undergraduate, we actually have 2 coaches that we've hired. And we identify using predictive analytics students early on that may be at risk for failure of the NCLEX RN and do some risk mitigation with them early on instead of waiting until the last semester.
Thanks, Usha. One thing I want to make sure to touch on, we only have a few minutes left, is while it might seem like the sky's the limit for these programs because they're often in demand, in speaking with a few of you, I've learned that clinical supervision and clinical hours are a real major barrier to growth. And I'm wondering if any or all of you have some ideas or examples of what you're trying to do to push past that or sort of systematically address that issue.
Yeah, I can address that. I mean, we have, it really varies by discipline. Some disciplines like imaging and lab, we have no problems finding placements in respiratory therapy. There's lots of opportunity there. But for many other disciplines like PA and midwifery and medicine, there's lots of problems in finding clinical placements. In fact, that is the rate limiter. I think if you talk to most who are involved in placing students, the rate limiter for growth is good clinical placements. And I think one of the things that we have moved towards is exposing students to telehealth early and weaving that into part of their clinical training. It's clearly going to be part of the clinical environment where they're going to practice, how they're going to practice. And so many of our programs now include a telehealth option as part of their training that substitutes where they can for hands-on clinical training. And it's not just substitution as part of their education, but this will be practice in the future. So I think you'll see a lot of it, a lot more growth in that space on the education side.
Anyone else want to jump in on that clinical supervision question?
I'll go just very briefly. We rely quite a bit on our alumni to be able to come back and say they're proud bull nurses and they want to take students and impact the future of the profession. So we are constantly doing things for the preceptors as much as we can. We also offer to pay for 6 credits of tuition for preceptors that can show they have precepted at least 200 hours, and that's something that comes, again, it's one of the state policies. And we're also serving them to ask about little things like, tickets to football games and certificates that come at the end. There is a tremendous amount of competition for these clinical spots. And for us, it's both internal and external. You've got a PA program, you've got an anesthesia residency, and then you've got all of the other schools of nursing. I don't exactly know how many schools of nursing we have in Florida, but I think in Ohio, when I was there, it was like 40 schools competing for, one spot. Makes it very hard. The preceptorship to hire program is another one that the hospitals like because, again, they're onboarding their employee in that last semester. And so that gives us a little bit of edge up.
Thanks, Usha. And one final question I'll try to work in here. Bethany, you mentioned the importance of cohorts for persistence of your students, but also in addressing once they're in the workplace, some of the risks and traumas and potential traumas of just, patients or their families being abusive and that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that looks like. And I think, Usha, you've mentioned that to me too, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so we focus a lot on resiliency and what we call wise mind and emotional mind status, and how do we move back and forth between our emotional minds and our wise mind. Part of it's a safety issue. Healthcare workers are 5 times more likely to be physically assaulted than any other sector. So we want to make sure people are safe, but we also want to make sure that people can continue to be great moms and great daughters and great sisters. And when we create job situations that then actually detract from their life, we unbalance the family, whether we want to admit it or not. So we spend more time on resiliency than we do on what are traditionally thought of as soft skills, because we think they're more important. And I will just say that the employers don't have time. They're massively understaffed, and so they don't have the time. So I think they really value and appreciate that we focus on that work. So we do that using a DBT therapy lens, and we are beginning to do some really interesting work with vagus nerve stimulation.
Hmm. I'd love to hear more about that at some other time, offline. And Usha, I think you mentioned that sort of trauma factor and how you try to prepare your students for the workplace too.
I don't know that you can ever fully prepare them, but we do our very best. We have an office of well-being, and we have two staff that, consistently do programming, goat yoga. We bring Dogs Inc. in here. The faculty serve yogurt at exam time, which little things to say, you know what, this gets better. And having them in simulation to do some of that conflict resolution is I run a mastermind group of the chief nurse officers in the area. We get together once a quarter just to talk about our needs and what we all need to do and learn from each other. And at one time I was asking about, what could our students do? What could we do better with our students? And one of them told me a story, and they had a young nurse who was in the room and having a lot of difficulty. Patient had died and was really struggling with going back in and talking to the family. And so, I think the person who was mentoring her said, but you've done this, you've done this in simulation, you've done this in school, you can do this. And she said, yeah, but my mannequins didn't die. And it stayed with me to say that, gosh, so we have a faculty member that's developing some AI related conflict resolution that we can do in our simulation. We can certainly afford to increase some of the simulation for what might be, generally considered soft skills.
Yeah, so some things can be simulated, some can't, including trauma and goats. This has been a really stimulating and insightful discussion, folks. We've got to leave it there because the hour is up. But thanks so much to our panelists, to our sponsor, Carolina Biological Supply Company, and to Carolina's Shannon McGurk, to the Chronicle's Ian Wilhelm, and to our colleagues Cassie Schmidt and Zach Giampatroni for producing today's session. Thank you, viewers, for your time and attention, your good questions. Please watch our website and our newsletters for upcoming events, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.